The Fire Within podcast. You need a sustainable plan, the right mindset, and the knowledge and inspiration to stoke the fire within. Just like the phoenix, you can burn your old habits, never turn back, and emerge completely anew. There are no shortcuts.
Hi, Fire Within Nation. This is Brandon with episode 2 of the Fire Within Nutrition and Fitness podcast. Today, our guest is Drew Mitchell. Drew Mitchell has had an extraordinary career with training and fitness and shifted directions now. And we're going to be asking him questions, understanding his journey, and seeing what kind of insight we can have when it comes to transformation in our lives. So to start off with, Drew, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I was born in Houston, Texas, the good old Lone Star State.
Yeehaw.
Yeehaw. I was raised in Columbus, Ohio. Go Bucks. And I've been all over the place. I've lived in Maine, wrestling in college. I've lived in Florida, LA, Las Vegas, and now North Carolina. So, wow, I don't know how deeply you want me to go as far as background, but born in 1980, very strict disciplinarian Vietnam vet father. Mother died when I was 7 years old. She was 35. She had breast cancer. So that was really challenging at a very young age that I dealt with.
Oh, wow, yeah.
We'll discuss like different types of health and fitness, not just physically based, but mentally, emotionally, all that good stuff. Growing up, my father was not a great father, to be honest, physically and mentally abusive. So that definitely, I think that was one thing I think got me into martial arts and physical activity at a young age. I think it was a defense mechanism, survival, if you will. And that took me down a lot of roads and different sporting activities and such, and other issues that we may get into here, I'm sure, on this podcast. But yeah, so I mean, I think sports and writing, I'm an avid writer. I write all the time, from poetry, short stories, screenplays, books. It's been my outlet. So, and that's how health and fitness, I definitely think, has saved my life.
That's awesome. Now, do you feel like the martial arts also helped like channel anger and things like that too? Or was it more just, I want to be able to defend myself?
Both, definitely. I think martial arts is great. I have a 2-year-old son now, and I definitely plan on putting him into martial arts classes to teach him structure, discipline, also just to get him active. I think it's really great to just teach younger kids some kind of discipline. Nowadays, they're kind of all over the place. But it definitely, watching Karate Kid movies growing up, talking about martial arts, I always felt like I was that underdog kind of runt character. And definitely martial arts and self-defense gave me more confidence and positive self-image. But yeah, I mean, I think it's used to, you got to use it to protection, not to hurt others. So later in my life, like I said, I'm sure we'll get to, I may have used it a wrong manner, but but yeah, like I said, I'll get into a little bit of that as we continue on with this.
Talk a little bit about your experience with fitness. I understand you did some bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
You've been a trainer for a long time. Just tell us a little bit about that progression.
Okay. Well, again, going back to my youth, I got into working out when I was pretty young, about 12, 13 years old. I was fortunate to be on some really amazing athletic teams, and I was always the smallest kid on all my teams, though. I was a runt, and I was short, I was skinny, and I had an all-American looking older brother, Christopher, who's all-American athlete, jock. And then I have a stepsister who's like captain of a cheerleading team, like homecoming court. Like it was just, and then here I was.
Now, since you guys can't see him listening in, this guy's biceps are bigger than my quadriceps. I mean, he's huge now.
It used to not be like that. But no, so I really got into working out to excel in sports, because I really love sports, but to, just not having a favorable childhood, just to be able to protect myself and maybe others if they were ever endangered or threatened. And so I got into working out, and it definitely increased my performance in sports. And also, which wasn't a bad thing at all either, about the age of 16 or 17, the opposite sex really started to show a lot of interest in me. And my abs and my chest and my biceps,
That's a good motivator.
It is. And, But so that was just an after fact of it. And then, here I am. I was a senior in high school, and I'd already begun going over to one of my good buddies' houses and working out with him on the regular. And he started noticing changes. His mother started commenting and asking me to write a training and a nutrition program for her, which all I had was like Arnold Schwarzenegger knowledge, the education of a bodybuilder. But hey, it worked for me. So I shared with others what worked for me, and some people will benefit from, but I mean, obviously if you adhere to anything, if you're disciplined, if you're committed, if you're paying attention to what you're doing, what you're eating and being active, your body's going to change, your mind's going to change. So I was a senior in high school writing out meal plans and training programs for my friends and for their parents, oddly enough.
Yeah.
I laugh about it now because and especially knowing you, who, in my opinion, you're an expert in nutrition and far exceed my knowledge. It's funny to think that I was charging people for meal plans as a senior in high school. But no, I mean, so it catapulted, and it was in between my senior year after I graduated high school, and I'm getting ready for my freshman year in college. And I'm like, I need to get a real job. I'd baled hay in Ohio, farmlands of Ohio, just some miscellaneous jobs, but never like a real career job. And I lived in Marion. It's a really small farm town, and Columbus, Ohio, home of the Buckeyes. Victory Fitness Center. It's actually still there today. It's crazy because a couple of years ago I drove by and I took a tour through that actual club. But it was the first health club that I ever got hired at, and I didn't know anything.
That's like me when I started at Lifetime. Yeah.
I knew a bodybuilding program. I knew Arnold's techniques, and that was about it. And I got hired probably based upon just off my looks. I looked like I knew what I was talking about, and then. So I was 18 years old. Crazy. So 20 years ago. So I've been in the fitness industry 20 years, competing on the national level bodybuilding since I was 24. So yeah, it's been an amazing ride.
I wanted to go back to one takeaway you said earlier. And what you said was if you commit consistently to something, I'm paraphrasing here, then you're going to see success. That's such an interesting point. And maybe that's part of what's off with some of these fad diets and crash diets is it's not consistent. So even if it's not exactly perfect for that person, you found in your experience, if they can do something consistently, they see results.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it like this. The fitness industry is saturated with supplements and meal plans and people buy into a program, and a lot of percentage, if they stick to it, they're going to see results, and they attribute it to this supplement or this workout program. And not to take anything away from a great program, or there are good supplements out there, necessary supplements I think we need, but I think you would attribute it more to just the awareness that they were putting forth into their daily life. They were aware of being active, encouraging themselves and having maybe a training partner to go to the gym with, holding each other accountable. And just the fact that they were never doing that previously is obviously going to produce an outcome that they've never seen before. Also, all of a sudden you're paying attention to what goes in your body, what you're feeding yourself for fuel, instead of just I'm hungry, I'm gonna go to McDonald's real quick and smash on a burger. So as soon as you realize okay, it's, obviously there's a lot of science to it, but at the same time, there's a lot of common sense. Fries or an apple. Come on, common sense will tell you that apple's better for you. So just being more aware, hey, I'm working out. I'm going to see my buddy at 3:00 for a great workout. I don't want to, destroy my results. I'm going to eat this apple. And it's just being more focused and aware of what you're doing. And I think that automatically is going to create change.
So just some kind of focused commitment. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your transformation specific? You've done some bodybuilding. You've had some periods of your life where you're experimenting with some things. Mm-hmm. Take us through some of that and kind of your transformation. One of the main themes of this show is this idea of a phoenix transforming a firebird.
Okay. So guide me, keep me, focused on the path that you want me to stay on, because I have a few different transformative experiences along these lines. So the first one I would say started out when I was 13 or so, really getting into working out. I fell in love with the educational bodybuilder, Arnold Schwarzenegger, on the cover. And I remember flipping through the pages and seeing what he looked like as a teenager, and then a 19-year-old, a 23-year-old. And then obviously we know who Arnold is now. And he was skinny at one time, believe it or not. And I'm in this bookstore and I see these pictures and I'm like, oh my goodness, like if he, I've always been the type of person, if someone else can do it, I can do it. If he can do it, I can do it. And he had this game plan, the roadmap of how he did it. And I'm like, all I got to do is follow it. So this was instantly overnight. I started eating 5,000 calories.
Oh my goodness.
Because he had this weight gain meal plan in his book. And I started working out consistently. I wanted to advance to the advanced workout routine, but he was very adamant about, if you're a beginner, start at the beginner workout. Focus on body weight exercises first, master, conditioning and good form and all that stuff. So I was so focused and committed. I knew this was going to be for the long haul. So, man, I weighed 96 pounds when I first started working out.
Holy cow.
I was in the 8th grade. And I got up to 112 because I wrestled. So I'm aware of what my body weight was because I was a wrestler and we're like insane about that. So I was 96 pounds in 8th grade. I got up to 112, which it may not sound like a lot, but that's almost 20 pounds. And especially in a year, that was huge for me. And everyone started to notice it right away. Now, the big jump is when I went from my freshman year to my sophomore year. I went from 112 to 160. I gained 45 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And like that's when I first experimented with like protein powders and like creatine and make sure I was on vitamins and everything. And so the first transformation I want to discuss is just the whole mindset. One, I believe every transformation first starts in the mind. You have to believe that it's possible. You have to you almost got to get to that point where like enough is enough. Like I'm done being this type of person. I'm done making excuses. This is what I want. This is what I'm willing to do to get there. And now let's put together a game plan and stick to it. So if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. Also, if you don't believe in yourself, you're never going to do what it takes to achieve success. Just kind of throw out, give props to like Tony Robbins on this one teaching that I will never forget. He talks about belief being everything. And your belief reinforces your action, and your action produces your result. So if you have small belief about yourself, what you're capable of achieving, you're going to take small action steps. And obviously, if you only take a little bit of action, you're only going to produce a little bit of results. What does that do? That reinforces your beliefs that maybe you can't do it. So you either stop or you continue taking small active action steps. You only see a little bit of results. And all of a sudden, you come out at gung-ho and be like, I know I can do this. Like, come hell or high water, I'm committed to making this change. I'm going to see it through. I know it's not a quick fix. I'm committed for the long haul. I'm going for it. All of a sudden, you're motivated on a whole nother level. And anyone who's changed something drastically in their life knows what I'm talking about. And you every day, like the old behaviors that you used to do, all of a sudden, like, well, no, like, is this going to move me forward? No, it's not. So you start changing your attitudes, your beliefs, your action. You start taking massive action, which produces massive results. It reinforces the fact, man, wow, maybe I can do this. And you keep taking massive action. Before you know it, you're there. So no, anyway, I got, my mind, like at that point, now fast forward to senior in high school, I was confident. And I used to be this, oh my goodness, my self-esteem was low. I didn't really believe in myself. I didn't feel attractive. And now all of a sudden I was getting this attention. I was better in sports. So that like all of a sudden, but it's like, you got to be aware, like humility is very powerful in this world. And I went from lacking confidence to being confident to being cocky. And that's when my life took a turn for the worse.
So before we go too far down, for a lot of our listeners, at the time, you were in high school, you didn't have a full-time job and all that. Mm-hmm. For some of our listeners, let's say they're a full-time mom.
Yeah.
And maybe they also work. How can they take that attitude changing action into behavior? What are some of the pitfalls and what are some ways that they can keep that fire burning that you've experienced? Because you've also trained thousands of people.
Yes. So stay-at-home moms, for example, my wife is a stay-at-home mom, and to all you stay-at-home moms out there, God bless you. You're amazing. You all do stuff that us men could never do. But no, it all starts with vision. A man or woman without vision will perish. You have to have vision. You have to have a why. Like, what's your why? What's your vision? What do you want, and what are you willing to do? It's not going to be easy. So know that first and foremost. I think writing your goals down is crucial. And posting them places where you see them every day. Like one thing Grant Cardone says he writes his goals down every morning and every night before he goes to bed, so they're fresh in his mind. So there's nothing like doing something like that that's going to keep them in your face. The one, you got to write your goals down. You got to write your goals down. There are moments. I know stay-at-home mothers. My brother just had a baby, and I know that they're not sleeping that much. But it's just got to be, even if it's 10-minute bursts, like, hey, for 10 minutes, baby's sleeping, and she might wake up in 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to do 20 reps of body weight squats. I'm going to do a plank for 30 seconds. I'm going to lay on my back after that and do some crunches. Like, if you maximize your time that you do have, that time will add up into minutes, half hours, hours, and then just being more aware of the food that you're eating.
Now, when you were going through your transformation, was there some setbacks that derailed you, and then you're like, no, I have to recommit my focus?
At that age, if we're talking about high school still, in high school, one setback that I had a hernia, which the doctor said if I had never got into working out hardcore, that it probably never would have required surgery. So it was my junior year. I was up to 185, and I lost 25 pounds and wasn't allowed to work out for like 4 weeks. And I really got down on myself because, I was like addicted to this lifestyle. And all of a sudden I was told I couldn't work out. And my whole mission was to get big and muscular and compete in bodybuilding. So now I just lost 25 pounds. And so then when I was allowed to work out, I had to slowly, incrementally, like the first week back, only lift 25% of the weight I was previously. And then the second week, 50, and then 75, and then so on and so forth. So I definitely battled some a little bit, like, you just gotta feed your, starve your fear, feed your faith. Don't feed doubt, negativity, because it'll just amplify and it'll grow and get bigger. Again, that's like the importance of having a big why and a big vision. And, that turned out like, usually it's those obstacles that they weren't there to like break you, that were meant to like help you have a breakthrough and get to that next level. And, so no, that was the only real big obstacle I had in high school, if you will.
Right. Now, fast forward again. You said things were starting to, you got cocky.
Yes.
You're enjoying your new body, and then things took a turn for the worse. Let's continue that storyline here.
Okay. And this is important. So, we're talking about the phoenix rising from the ashes and, transformative power in your life. And I transformed myself from this like skinny little runt of a kid who was so naive and insecure as a child to transforming into this confident, good athlete. And then all of a sudden now I'm in college. I was wrestling in college. I remind you, I went through a lot. I know so many people have it worse than I did, but I don't think any child should have to endure any kind of abuse, physical, mental, nothing. So that I already had a lot of pain, a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness in my heart, and not aware, how it can kind of take form if you don't handle it, if you don't deal with it. So 21 years old, I'm wrestling in college. One of my teammates, we were working out together after practice one day, and I'm naturally very passionate and just intense. And after a workout, man, we're having our protein drinks or whatever, and he's like, hey man, so what are you taking? And I was still innocent at that point. And I said, well, I mean, like just creatine and glutamine. He's like, no, man, like roids, what are you taking? And I'm like, oh no, I've never taken any steroids before. And he's like, come on, dude, you don't have to lie to me. So long story short, he's like, well, why not? And I was like, well, I don't really know where to get them. He's like, well, me. So 21 years old, I started taking steroids. Now steroids, they amplified everything. They brought out the demons inside of me that I never faced. And I think we all face demons of different sizes and colors and shapes and dimensions. And, if you never face them, eventually they're going to come out and haunt you. And that's what happened to me. So all of a sudden, like I'm partying. I was doing more than that. I was drinking. I was smoking weed. I was doing cocaine, and steroids on top of that. So I was just feeding my demons. So I'll let you ask what you want to ask, and I'll answer from there.
So with all that going on, were you aware of kind of the damage that was being done as it was happening, or did it just was there a particular episode that went, whoa, what am I doing?
No, I wasn't aware of it at the time, because your ego and pride are some of the biggest liars in the world. And they'll tell you that you're all good, that it's everyone else's problem. So fast forward, let's see, another year or so. And I'm competing in bodybuilding now, winning bodybuilding shows. I was 24 years old and qualified for nationals for the first time. And there was this girlfriend actually I was dating in college, and she loved to have fun. She loved to party, and so we partied together. And so again, wrestling. I'm sorry, I'm kind of backtracking a little bit. Like, so when I was wrestling in college, one of my coaches, he was actually a world champion, Mike Brown. He kind of got me into UFC fighting. That was the wrong move for me.
Oh.
And my teammate, Jesse Peterson. So I'm wrestling in college. I'm in really good shape. I look the part. I'm cocky. And now I'm starting to fight on top of that. So I took that into, revisiting all those demons I never dealt with from my childhood. Now I'm out at a bar. I'm drinking. Someone bumps into me, gets smart with me. I didn't hesitate. I would just punch. And I got in more fights in my early 20s than I care to remember. I hurt a lot of people and got in trouble. So
it's funny because I've known you for the last couple of years, and you're like the most gentle giant. Like, I watch you in the kiddie pool with your kid. Like, you get down in there in the 3-inch water, and you're just the most. It's amazing, just the perspective shift and the transformation, kind of from that standpoint. Now, when did you? Was there a particular incident, fight, arrest, or something that really made you realize something needs to change?
Yes. There were a couple of them. One, as I slowly, the world has a way of kind of showing you your true colors and putting a mirror in front of your face to kind of reflect upon. Two things. So one, I used to get in like fights on the highway, roid rage is what I call it, because I was on steroids and fighting on the highway. And I was living in Columbus, Ohio at the time. My girlfriend was living in Cleveland. So it's about a 2-hour drive. And I'm on the highway. And this guy, long story short, I've already gotten in a fight on the road probably like 5 different times. Getting out and punching people and throwing them on the hood and getting back in my car and taking off like crazy. I don't like to admit this, but I did this. And this was the last time I ever got in a fight on the highway. I get out of my car. This guy cut me off and flicked me off and pulled over on the side of the highway. And I was always the first one to get in a fight. Like, all right, let's go. And I jump out of my car and I'm walking back to him, like throwing my arms up, like, come on, let's go. And this guy just opens his door up and he's like, you want some of this? And I said, yeah, let's go. And he's like, you want some of this? I'm like, yeah, let's go. And he points a gun at me. He's like, you want some of this? And he probably called me, a couple names. And I looked at him and like my heart stopped for a second. And I was like, all I could think about, like in my mind, I was praying to God, like, please God, don't let him shoot me. And I was just like, no, man, you're cool, bro. I was like, I don't want any of that. I was like, sorry, man, have a good day. And I turned around and I'm just praying, don't shoot me in the back. Don't shoot me in the head, as I'm walking to my car. And I got in my car and I took off so fast and I never got in a fight. People cut me off. I just wave at them. People honk at me. I just wave at them. And like to this day, I'll never forget that. That was one moment.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. The second one, the girl I was dating in college, again, I'm all partying. I was this like epitome of health and fitness, yet I was like perfect Monday through Friday night, Saturday, I partied. And again, cocaine, ecstasy, marijuana, alcohol, steroids, and I was uncontrollable. And sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's another thing about health. There's so many different levels of health. Losing my mother at a young age, I think I craved that feminine attention. One, I just wanted attention, period. But two, like just feeling love there, like you matter, like you were important. And so like Freudian theory or whatnot, like craving the attention from the opposite sex. I mean, I was so promiscuous and I never was loyal to a woman. And so I cheated on this girl I was dating. And in turn, she cheated on me. And she cheated on me with a guy that I worked with at the health club that I was working at that time. And I found out and I went to his house at like 1:30 in the morning. And that was the beginning of this 2.5 month craziness of, we got in 3 different fights. One time, like he knew where I worked out. He was sitting on my car as I walked out of the gym with one of his buddies, like after I had gotten in a fight with him the first time, got a free trip to jail. And now these two guys are sitting in my car. I just got done working out, and one of them starts running at me. His buddy starts running at me as I'm about 15 feet away from my car, and getting a crazy bloody fight. I knocked this one guy out and kneed him in the face. This is horrible to even say, to remember all this stuff. And I'm getting in a fight with him, and literally cops pull up like, freeze, put your hands behind your head. And my whole life flashes before me. So I was in jail, facing all these stupid charges. And just thank God, this is just a quick side note, like all these charges were dropped because the girlfriend I dated decided not to show up in court. And like, so the courthouse dismissed all these charges, which was a grace. Like that's a whole nother story for another time, how that happened. But no, that was what woke me up. That really woke me up. Like sitting in jail for almost a month.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Man, I can't sit by myself for 15 minutes. I can't. I think I discussed that on the last podcast. Wow. So that'll definitely shake you up. Now, listeners at home, if they didn't know who you were today, it would be easy to dismiss you as a completely lost cause.
Absolutely.
Like the epitome of a horrible human being.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we've got through that point, talk to us how going from sitting in jail to all this wisdom and perspective and restraint and gentleness that you have now. Tell us a little bit about that journey and process.
Okay. Goodness. So, I mean, in all honesty, initially it was just like finding peace through like God. Like I went to a church. I was a mess. I, suicidal tendencies. I held a gun to my head, about to pull a trigger. And in my life, like I was so depressed at one time after all of this stuff. Cause when I lost so much. I was in jail facing all these charges, and I lost this girlfriend. When you're young and dumb, you think that's everything. And at the same time, I got all these chemicals that are doing things to my brain and getting out of my body. So I was a mess. And after like throwing this gun down, and like I remember having a butcher knife to my wrist, and the one thought I had was, do I chop it or do I saw? And like that's horrible to remember, but at that moment, I dropped the knife, and it was like a Wednesday evening, and there was a church not far away from me. I was like, I need to go to church. Like, oh my God, I need help. And so that's one thing. I think you need to admit things in life. Like I was talking about running from your demons, whether you have an emotional addiction to food, or being negative, abusive, verbally, anything. You got to follow the fruit to the root. You got to find the root cause of what is creating this. And so honestly, I don't want to push God on anyone, but like some supernatural things occurred that showed me that, hey, my life is important, and I'm very valuable, and I'm here for a reason. So that was the beginning of kind of my awakening. And fast forward, I would love to say that I walked on the straight and narrow after then, but I didn't. I had a lot of friends that died from drugs in the next 10 years. As I kind of tiptoed back and forth. Oh, I was good. I was a saint. And then, oh, no, I ain't. And like, and honestly, what really awakened me, bodybuilding, I was still going for my pro card. And I'd won the Mr. Las Vegas, and I'd done the National Bodybuilding Championships down in Miami, Florida that same year. I think it was 2015. And I took 4th place at nationals. Interrupt me at any time if I'm.
No, I'm just captivated. This is
so
amazing story.
So I took 4th place in bodybuilding. And again, rewind back to when I had that Arnold's book when I was 13 or 14 years old. I saw this. All of a sudden, I felt like my life had meaning and purpose. I was like, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to be a professional bodybuilder. And so I was so gung-ho focused on it. And now here I am, so many years later, and I'm literally like one step away. Like had I gotten 2nd place instead of 4th, I would have turned pro and like achieved that goal. And so now the next year, here I am, 4th in the nation. I'm like one of the top bodybuilders to win like the light heavyweight crown at the USA Bodybuilding Championships. I go to Mr. Las Vegas and I think won that again. And now here I am right for the USA's, and I'm like one of the top favorites to win. And I don't place in the top 10. And I was devastated. And the thing that I had spent probably $15,000 on steroids in the 4 months leading up to that.
Oh, wow.
I was training with all the top professional bodybuilders out in Las Vegas, 10-time Miss Olympia. I was Kyle Hidetada. Like, oh my goodness. I had so many amazing mentors and trainers out there and training partners, and everyone's like, oh my God, this is your year. This is your year. So I had such a self-reflective. I mean, I fell from sky high just to rock bottom. And now all of a sudden, like, I tried to stop all these drugs cold turkey, and they devastated my mind. For the first time in my life, I couldn't sleep at night. Like, I had anxiety. I was taking, one night I remember I took, I don't even know, I'm so like anti-drugs now, but people take them for anxiety and to sleep and stuff. Anyway, I used to take like half of one, and it would knock me out. And I took 4 of them one night, and I was wide awake.
Oh, wow.
And so again, I turned back to my faith, in God, and I went to a local church in Las Vegas. And my faith, I believe, is what saved me. And remembering that I did have a bigger purpose. Like, I had an identity crisis, and I had, for so many years, I was on tunnel vision, like this, like putting my value of my life, like, and turning pro and being this professional bodybuilder, forgetting all the other qualities and skills and talents that I had. And, so now it was just literally, it was a self-identity crisis. It was a self-awakening moment that I had. And there were a few pivotal moments that really kind of changed the course of my life.
So I think for our listeners, there's some great takeaways and parallels. Whatever their health, fitness, mental journey is, you've mentioned tiptoeing the line, going back and forth, doing the right thing, not doing the wrong thing. And that's the exact same path we all take with whether it's weight loss, putting on muscle, overcoming, anxiety, depression, all these things. And it's never a linear journey. It's never just from A to B in a straight line. There's going to be ups and downs. But you have almost like these, I can't even think of the
ebbs and
word.
flows. Is that what it is?
Well, ebbs and flows, but then you hit like these platforms where you get a lot better, and you learn a lot, and then you're able to apply that. And even as you get back off track again, you just build and build and build upon that. So I think a takeaway is no matter how desperate the situation looks, I think if they can recommit and have that focus, then there is hope for whatever their end goal is. And I think you're just an incredible example of that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So carrying on from there, now you've taken these experiences, you've taken this transformation, you've helped tons and tons and tons of people. What is it about that drives you to continue helping people?
One, it's definitely understanding. First off, like, I didn't do it on my own. Like, and I think that's one thing that we all make in life. I think, I got in this situation on my own, like, I have to get out of it myself. And that's not, being a trainer for 20 years, like, even professional athletes have trainers. Like, even, some of the best CEOs in the world are working with life coaches and mindset mentors, like, to keep their mindset elevated at all times. So definitely one is just understanding, like, there's nothing wrong with reaching out for help. Like, I mean, Danny Johnson, one of my mentors, has a great saying. She says, find somebody who has what you want and do what they do. Do what they did or do what they are doing. I just want to say something. Like, I want to share this experience because, like, something that really it was a pivot point, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I was running in Las Vegas at a park. There was this park that my wife and I went to. Like, I got up to 240 pounds at like 5'6". I was so unhealthy. It was all muscle, but I was out of shape. So
like Fat Thor?
I wasn't that fat, but I was so unhealthy with all these. I was eating 8,000 calories a day, and I've been over to my shoe and I'm come up huffing and puffing. It was horrible. And so I went on some like master cleanse and all this stuff. And I started running every day, and I met this guy named Fate, crazy enough. His name's Fate. And he talked to me about meditation. And that's one thing I'm going to, touch on, the power of meditation and prayer, if you will. But that changed my whole life. Like, I'm telling you, like, focusing on letting go of the past, dealing with it, being okay with it, saying, hey, this does not define who I am, letting it go, learning from it, building upon it, and then just boom, going skyrocketing forward away from it.
Now with the meditation and peace, what is your application of meditation? What does that look like?
It's interesting because I just had a session with this guy, Fate, a couple days ago, and I revisited it because I meditate every day. But I wanted to, again, because I'm going through a big transformation in my life again right now. And so I like to kind of revisit, like, what are my foundations? Because, you're only as strong as the foundation that you're building upon. So I went back and I said, you know what, Fate? I said, I have a question. And he's like, yeah. And I said, I'm going to ask you like I've never done this in my life. And I'm going to come to you like a baby trying to learn a new skill. I said, how do I meditate? And he said to me, okay. First off, he said, well, one, I just want to commend you on asking, because that takes a lot, because it's ego and pride that won't allow you to admit, when you don't know it all. And so I think that's the first step in just transforming. You got to be honest with yourself. And so he just told me, he's like, I want you to close your eyes. This was over the phone. Close your eyes, sit upright, hands open. And I want you to breathe. He's like, have you ever watched the ocean breathe? And this is like a revelation to me. This was so awesome. And I'm like, what? And he's like, have you ever listened to and watched the ocean breathe? And I was like, no. He's like, well, the ocean is alive. He's like, it breathes, He's like, when the current, like, it rushes in, it's like a big exhale, and it's, he's like, then when it pulls back, it's breathing in and it's pulling back. And he's like, I want you to focus on the ocean breathing right now. And he goes, I'm not going to give you any cadence, but I want you to mimic the ocean's breath, and I want you to breathe with the ocean. And it was so surreal and so calming. And then we went through, what I do when I'm meditating is, whatever barrier, whatever, you can feel if you're having blockage going on in your mind, your heart, your life, whatever you're being tested with at that moment in time. So I like to picture as a physical being in my mind. If I don't want it there, I'm going to get it out. So I'm breathing in what I want. I'm breathing in love, light, hope, joy, peace. And I'm exhaling pain, darkness, negativity, frustration, whatever is hindering me at that moment. And I will physically see the word. I'm breathing it out because I don't want it. So I'm getting rid of it. And I'm breathing in what I do want. And I'm encompassing it. And it's encompassing me. Yeah. So, that's just kind of, doing something is better than nothing. I think, there's no right or wrong way for anyone. If you focus on your breathing and slow down and focus on what you want, it's going to be beneficial to you.
It reminds me a lot. There's a book called The Power of Ted, and it actually takes place on the ocean. And they talk about something called a FISB. The F is whatever you focus on creates the inner state. That's the IS, and which then creates your behavior, the B.
Nice.
So very similar to what you were saying earlier too. But even just taking that concept, I think could make a big difference. And I was always afraid to meditate. I remember in college, I was a music major. My trumpet professor's like, hey, all right, I want you to try meditation. And I'm like, no, I'm a Christian. I'm not going to do it. And I gave him like this huge hard time. I was such a jerk. And now I'm meditating. I'm like, everything he said was right. And I was a stupid kid.
Right.
But and then he's like, all right, we'll just focus on this pitch. So no matter what it is and whatever your comfort level is, even if you don't believe in the spiritual side of it, there's science behind taking deep breaths. For instance, if you're constantly tense and you have poor posture and your diaphragm can't expand, your body's getting a signal all day long. You're not getting enough oxygen to the blood. You're not getting enough oxygen to the blood. And simply taking the time to take intentional breaths stops that cycle. And there is a hormonal change with norepinephrine, adrenaline. So I think that's awesome. And talking about all your demons and all these drugs in your system and all these different things, we can see how that can start to shift that. And it's so cool, especially for a guy. A lot of guys don't like to admit that, hey, I take the time to think about light and peace and meditating and breathing. But there's a scientific basis for it. And it does make a huge difference.
It definitely does. I adhere to that.
Yeah. So since we're kind of talking about some of your daily habits now that help you to maintain this transformation and be as successful as you are, what other daily habits do you have that you believe make a positive compounding effect in your life?
That's a great question. I definitely think displaying gratitude. I think so many of us each and every day, I was actually just talking to one of my clients about this yesterday, is especially whether you're in health and fitness or, even in a business sense, where if you're a high achiever, a lot of times, we're just checking off the goals and not embracing them. And let's say this is a cool experience I had from a Tony Robbins event I went to. He's like, who in here is sports fans? And like, the place, this got thousands of people. And everyone's like, who? And it's like, who's your team? Raise your hand. Who's your team? And everyone's throwing out who their favorite college sports team is. And so he gets to the point, he's like, all right, guys, here we go. He goes, it's the last week college football. Your team just qualified for the playoffs. They're in the national championship game. He's like, what we're about to do, I'm about to count down from 5. And when we get to 0, I want you to celebrate like your team just won the national championship. You're with your buddies drinking and having fun. And he has an alarm set and everything. And it's like on the big screen, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The place erupted. It's like, woo, people are running down the aisle, high-fiving each other, jumping up and down, woohoo. And he's like, all right, and stop. He's like, guys, you realize? He goes, you know what? You're jumping up and down. You're thinking, we did it. Like, guys, you didn't do a damn thing. You were sitting on your couch watching this team win the game. Like, you guys weren't out there playing. And he's like, what about in the middle of the season when you guys lost? You're like cursing on that damn quarterback, this and that. Sorry, I want to curse on your show. And but all of a sudden you guys are winning, and it's like, oh, we won. He's like, guys, if you're aware, like how much you guys were celebrating someone else's victory, if you would begin to celebrate your own victories like that in your own life, what you achieve will blow your mind. And ever since he shared that, I'm like, oh my goodness. So I was sharing with my client yesterday. I'm like, he's such a high achiever. He's an attorney and he owns his own law firm and everything. And he's very successful. And he was just talking about his achievements. He's like, yeah, now I got to do this. I go, hold on a second. And I shared that story with him. I said, don't forget to celebrate your wins. I'm like,
yeah,
this might have been a goal of yours for 10 years, 15 years. And what you just achieved it. Now you're like, oh, on to the next one. I'm like, hold on, dude. Like, just like you celebrate your team's victory, go out and celebrate, man. You just freaking won. Like, that's awesome. So one, I think we need to celebrate our victories. And some of our victories might just be going and walking on a treadmill for 10 minutes.
Yeah,
that's
a victory. That's a change.
Yeah. So, don't forget to celebrate your victories. Celebrate your wins.
Now, we're kind of talking about these habits.
Oh, the habits. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Told you, keep me focused.
Yeah, we're right on.
So
meditation.
I say gratitude. I just want to say gratitude, like just a little deeper into that. Gratitude, like we so often like, okay, come out. What if we have a flat tire? You're like, oh my goodness, we're already running late for work. Now I got a flat tire. Oh, I'm gonna be late for work. And now you got to take care of that. Now you're late to work. Like if you take that energy and freaking run with that can affect your entire day. Now, if you work with people like you and I do, now all of a sudden we're not our most powerful version of ourselves. So we're not going to be delivering the service that they're paying us for. And guess what? Maybe they use us and the fuel that we feed them to go fuel the rest of their lives and the people that they're interacting with. So the first thing I do every morning, I drop to my knees and I display gratitude. I'm like, thank you, God, for waking me up. And like, I'll go over a checklist of what I'm grateful for. Like, I'm grateful for having a house, a car, clothes, food, a family, health. And I just think that sets the tone. Remind yourself of what you do have, because so many times we want to focus on what we're going for or what we don't have, what we're lacking. We focus on what we do have. We realize that we are blessed no matter what situation we're currently in.
That's very true. There's have you ever heard of Viktor Frankl? Dr. Viktor Frankl?
I have not.
He was a Holocaust survivor.
Oh my, okay.
And went on to be like a psychotherapist. And that was the thing. He said, no matter how bad the situation, this is somebody who lived through the concentration camps where everybody around him was dying. One thing they could never change, one thing they could never change is your attitude. And you always have that. So if you keep that perspective positive and what can you gain from whatever that situation is, I think that's helpful. And that's very important what you said about how your attitude affects those around you no matter what your job is.
Mm-hmm.
If you're working behind a counter at a grocery store, if you're a doctor, if you're an auto mechanic, but it does have kind of a rippling effect.
It absolutely does. If you take into consideration, sometimes like the world is bigger than us. And I know sometimes we think that the world revolves around us, but it doesn't. And I feel that we were all here for a purpose, for a reason. And just going out of your way to make someone else smile, to make them feel important, it goes so, so far. And don't underestimate the power that you have as well. Marianne Williamson, we're powerful beyond measure. Like if we would kind of really focus on that statement for a moment, we're powerful beyond measure. The capabilities that we have, the potential that we have when we are truly focused, you can do anything. I truly believe that.
I think you're a good example of that for sure.
I appreciate it. Same with you, man. Absolutely. What you've done for yourself and then other people has been pretty amazing.
Sharing the love. Now I want you to talk directly to our listeners.
Okay.
And no matter what their goals are, whether it's nutrition, fitness, health, mind shift, if they're battling addiction, whatever it is, if you were going to give them your 3 top strategies to come closer to their goal, what would those be?
First, you have to have a vision. You have to have a vision. You have to have a why, because no matter where you are, if your why is big enough, it will overpower any addiction. It'll overpower any circumstance. It'll overcome any situation that you're currently in. And that why is going to drive you and motivate you and hold you accountable. And with that why, write it down and post it everywhere you're going to see it, and multiple times a day. 2, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself and others. But it starts with yourself. I think all of us have regrets, mistakes that we've made in our life. And what we don't understand is that just holding on to that and harboring that is subconsciously, it's holding you back from achieving your goals. Because you're like, I could never do that. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not smart enough. And you just beat yourself up all the time. Forgive yourself and also forgive others. Forgiveness is huge. People think, that person, I'll never forgive them. You're not hurting them at all. It's like drinking a poison and expecting the other person to die. And holding on to that is only holding you back. Truly, it truly is. And lastly, your vision, your why, forgiveness, and I would say gratitude. Your attitude should always be gratitude, because let's say the law of attraction. When you display gratitude, what you're grateful for, you're opening the universe and your spirit into receiving more of whatever, more prosperity, more health, more good experiences. So that's what I would say.
And there's tons of research now into positive psychology. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, actually, she wrote what's called the Broaden and Build Therapy, Broaden and Build Theory. And she's based out of UNC Chapel Hill, actually. But that law of attraction. So if your mood is always poor, who's going to want to hire you? Who's going to want to work with you and bring opportunities your way?
Absolutely.
And I definitely experienced quite a bit of that. Awesome. Drew, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to share your wisdom. Now, I understand you have a couple books out. Can you tell us what the titles are and just a quick blurb about what they might find in them?
Yeah, absolutely. First book I ever wrote is titled The Warrior Within. That's more of an autobiography from my earliest memories to probably about the age of 28 or so, The Warrior Within. Another book I have is titled Unstoppable. Faith's Journey of Overcoming the Impossible, and different lessons. Some similar, like we talked about today. There's a chapter on faith. There's a chapter on fear, stuff like that. And then another one I'm working on right now, is titled The 10 Essentials. And like I said, writing has been a saving grace for me as well. And that I recommend people writing as well. You should write all the time. Get your goals out. Write your feelings out. Keep a journal. But and then, I have screenplays too, but that's we'll talk about that another time.
That's where Sylvester Stallone started, so who knows? Now, if they wanted to get their hands on a copy of those books, where could they find them? You can go to Amazon and just search, like Andrew Mitchell or Drew Mitchell, The Warrior Within, or Unstoppable. They'll come up. So I think they're under Andrew Mitchell. And Unstoppable or The Warrior Within on Amazon. Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps us up for today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And sorry, I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, it's all good wisdom. Thanks so much.
Absolutely, Brandon. Keep kicking butt.
Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you got a lot of value out of today's episode. If you did, go check us out at firewithinnf.com. You can subscribe to our newsletters and make sure you never miss an episode or any other content. Also, be sure to follow us on social media.